Hello and welcome to Film and Game Composers. I am Meena Shamaly, and in this video we are looking at Strezov Sampling's Thunder X3M. So this is a percussion library of a different bent and is the finale, I suppose, in the Thunder series. There's been Volume 1, 2, and 3, and Thunder X3M puts them all together, adds a whole bunch of new content, overhauls the keyboard and the interface layout, and presents a pretty much a new product. I haven't actually tried any of the other Thunders as yet, so for me, I'm looking at this completely fresh. I'm just looking at everything that is included in the Thunder concept. So if we have a quick look at the website, we are looking at basically the philosophy is unique instrument combinations recorded together. So timpani and toms recorded together, Bulgarian two-pounds and snare drums recorded together, stuff like that. You don't always know from the names of the patches what the combinations are, but they still sound pretty interesting to me. So, yeah, there can be up to 15 people playing percussion at one time in any of these recordings. So, yeah, it's pretty neat to have. Now, there's a whole bunch of features and product aspects and that kind of thing. We'll get into all of that. And we are looking at a price of $329 for, what's the technical requirement? 27 gigabytes of hard drive space. So 8.5 gigabytes for the zip and 19 gigabytes for the unzipped folder. I mean, as far as libraries go, gigabyte content doesn't really matter as long as what's in there is good. But yeah, you need quite a bit of hard drive space for this one. And you need the full version of Kontakt. So if you don't have it, get it. And here we go. Let's take a look. So we've got it loaded in Kontakt, and it's a pretty neat interface. I really like the graphic in the background. It's pretty nice and fresh. It has a really cool aesthetic. As we said, it requires the full version of Kontakt, so it will not show up in libraries. So you can either load it up in files, as we have here, and I've also got it in the quick load menu. So under Strezov Sampling, Thunder X3M, Instruments, and a whole bunch of things. So what you can get a blank patch and multi-patches. I've just got the blank loaded here, and what you can do, as you can see, you've got zones, and see the keyboard colors. Each of these is zones. So you go about 5 keys each. No, 5. What am I saying? 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow, I cannot count. So I've got 6 keys for each zone, and each of them represents a different drum combination. And each of them is a zone. So zone 1 corresponds to this, zone 2 corresponds to this, zone 3, etc. So we've got 12 zones. So that's a lot you can do. And you can pick which drum goes into which zone from these little categories, and these are the drum combinations with some really cool names like the Brute, the Kraken, the Mandarin, the Hulk, stuff like that. Armada Snares, Pirate Ship in the high ensembles, Mountain King, like that. And the ethnic percussion is a bit more straightforward. Solo percussion is a lot straightforward. Epic metals is a mix of straightforward and really fun names. Sound design percussion and distorted percussion. There's a whole bunch of things there. Mainly, I think you were looking at the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories, because the last 2 are distorted. Sound design is affected through a bunch of things, and distorted is being run through an amplifier. So that's pretty cool. What I've got here is you can run the multi-patches, and they'll have the clacks, the metals, the ethnic, the high, the low, solo, sound design, and toms. And I mean, I like working this way, but you can absolutely put in whatever combination you want. So I can have something from the low ensembles in this first zone, something from ethnic percussion in this second zone, and distorted percussion in the third zone. So now what we get is... Oh no, I've got the wrong one highlighted. So that's your first one, the first zone, your second zone, and your third zone, as you can see. So yeah, let me just load up the multi-patches. Oh, I hate it when Quick Load does this. Load up the multi-patches and just have a look at what we have. I'll start with the low ensemble, because these are the nice, big, juicy ones that we like to play with. All right, so low ensembles. If you look at the zones here, you can just, they're pretty much laid out. So have a quick play. And that's the last zone. You got some risers there. That's pretty cool. So the low ensembles sound really juicy. I'm guessing there's some grand casses and stuff happening there. So, and you can combine them together as well. And basically, you've got the round robins spread over the 6 keys. So it's basically the same quote-unquote sample, but it's not sample. It's the same patch, or same hit. But these are all round robin variations. So it makes doing rolls really easy. I've got a weighted keyboard here, so it doesn't always help with the rolls, but... but you can. I've also got synth keyboards on the side, so I like to. I switch it up depending on how I'm feeling, really. So these sound really cool. And if you have a look, you've got a global volume section and an individual volume section for each of the zones. So say we're looking at zone. Let's look at zone. I'm liking this zone. This zone is which one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Zone 5, which is the Kraken. So if I, for example, turn off the close and the hall and the deca, we'll just hear the hall. So now it's close, it's really up. Can you hear the detail coming in? Sometimes it feels the hall and the deca can be interchangeable, but I like using them together because then you just get a more, I don't know, full version of the whole thing. Now, there's this other thing here, bass. So that's basically the instruments kind of captured. I don't know if it's affected, so it's like more of the bass coming through. I'm not sure, but it's a useful thing to beef it up, I suppose. So you can beef up the bass here. And you also have a compressed version, which you can then mix in. But what I've found is if I have all 3 of these loaded and I'll mix in the compressed, it adds a bit of oomph. At some point I figured it felt like it was phasing, but maybe not. Maybe that was me going crazy. But yeah, so if you turn it all on together, you get a really kind of powerful, really thunderous, if you will, sound. But then this is for your natural sound. Close, hall, and deca. And I can do it for the individual drum here. So close, I'll just put the Kraken back here. And if I turn on the bass and the call, I can make it so only the Kraken, only this zone has the bass. then I'd have to turn it all the way down for each of the other zones. So I suppose this is one of my gripes at the moment, is I wish there was an easier way to manage that. Like perhaps a global zone volume, because right now I'm having to adjust each of these volumes individually, but I can't just on the fly, zone 3, put all the volume down or all the volume up. I have to literally go through every single microphone position to be able to pull it off. So that's a bit of a gripe, but it's not a showstopper. I just have to find my way around it. Perhaps I can assign a MIDI controller that controls all of them at once, and there's a bunch of tutorials on how to do that. Spitfire actually have a good tutorial on how to assign controllers to a whole bunch of parameters at once, so it's pretty sweet. It's different to just right-clicking on things and learning MIDI automation. It's a whole other thing. But yeah, check it out. I should put a link to it, shouldn't I? But yeah, anyway, that's a different topic. So those are the low drums, and they sound fantastic. And the hall sounds close enough and reverberant enough that you're not feeling closed in or anything. So it feels like a big enough hall for that amount of players, however the amount of players is for each ensemble. And at the same time, it'll take really well to reverb. So for example, here, if I add in, where am I going? Audio inserts, there we go. So I'll just play. So it's still pretty cool. It still feels punchy. I'll just put in a nice instance of QL spaces. And maybe put it in a Tycho hall. So, and right now it's just set to dry. So as you can see, you can still keep the punch and maintain and add a really nice reverb tail. So if you do something like this, I've got to use a send effect by default. Depends. It drives me nuts because I can never have one way or the other. And so it really is. That's just an extra thing. It really isn't the whole point. The whole point is it sounds punchy enough that it can kind of be dry. It feels like dry wet, if that makes any sense. But that seems to be part of the ethos or the philosophy behind Strezov sampling libraries. Is it's still punchy enough, but it's not so dry and sterile, however you say that. Anyway, so there you go. So that's low ensembles. Oh, you've also got a for each zone you've got an equalizer. So if I'm so it helps you do some pre-mixing before you run it through other effects and other EQs and that kind of thing. So that's really, really awesome. So you can, EQ it at the drum level and, add in the compressed signal as well. Mix it in, because it feels like parallel compression is what's happening here, because the ultimate result is that you can get equal amounts of natural and compressed signal. So that is the low ensembles. Let's go into high ensembles. Now I'm just getting it from here. It's getting annoying. Any kind of weight you might see is more my system than anything else. It's got nothing. I don't have SSDs. I don't have all that kind of stuff. So it's still not in the plans, or still in the plans in the future. But so sometimes it gets a little annoying to wait for things to load a bit longer than I'd like them to. But that's besides the point. Anyway, high ensembles. So these are actually pretty cool because they aren't really high. They're more mid ensembles with a bit of a low end. So you got some snares, snare combinations. So this is really powerful and punchy. And then you got I really like the fact that, there's 6 keys to play with, so I can, if I feel like just doing black keys, if I feel just doing white keys, if I feel like really rolling between everything. And that's all the zones. So as you can see, there's some pretty cool sounds in there, and the snares are fantastic. And you can still add the bass and the compressor. So that's some some heavy stuff. And it's really fantastic, and it does provide. You have some of these premium combinations that are really interesting, and they don't necessarily sound too different to a lot of other percussion, but at the same time, they are unique because of these combinations. Like, yes, these are snares, but I don't know what the snares are combined with. And over here, for example, I think that's like snare and Grand Kassar, if I'm correct. So that's some really, really awesome stuff in here. The sound is speaking for itself, really, and you don't really need to hear what it's like with the closed deck. The sound is there, and it's not like you're paying for one edition that has close mics and another edition that has hall mics. It's all in there, so you can explore safely. The aggregate sound is fantastic, and it's how it's recorded. So that's high ensemble. We got what have we got? We got toms as well, which in the zones is actually it's under solo percussion, but there's a whole bunch of toms in there, and I think some tom ensembles, a couple of tom ensembles in there. So if we were looking at, yeah, there we go. So here are the toms. Basically, they're very ubiquitous in trailers and almost passé at this point, but they still sound awesome. Like, I will never stop using toms for large percussion. Now, there is a large dynamic range to play with, but the annoying thing is that there isn't a velocity curve that I can adjust. Because sometimes it feels like the difference is too massive, and to access some of those lower articulations, I can't either turn up the lower articulations, so that when I play software, it's still the soft articulation, but it's a bit louder, which it's a feature in some libraries. I'd love for that to be included in some of the in the zone. So like a per zone velocity curve, like maybe just a little extra thing. Adjust velocity curve or extra options or something like that. That's just my own opinion. I can learn to live with it. It's definitely not a showstopper, but I always like to say it, tell it how it is, how I feel. I feel like sometimes some of these drums can get a bit, like right now it's a bit too quiet. But sometimes it depends on which keyboard controller I'm using. So if I'm using my piano keyboard, so to speak, my weighted keys, it can get a little bit quiet. But then sometimes it feels a little better on my synth keys. I wish there were a way I could adjust it without having to go into the back and be like, okay, choose the group and all that kind of stuff. That's with this amount of samples, I really don't want to go through the trouble. But that's, again, that's just my little gripe because I'm a bit spoiled, and it's okay. People will survive without it. So some really cool toms in here. What I find sometimes is that some ensembles sound wetter than others with the same close Decca Hall thing. So here, for example, this sounds pretty wet, but this sounds a little drier, maybe because it's a lower frequency, so it's not ringing out as much in those higher frequencies. That could be it. But even then, see, this is a bit lower. But I think that is one of the ensemble, the zones. So yeah. And because they're ensembles, sometimes it might sound a little weird doing something like this, especially with the lower ones. But they do sound quite impressive. What else we got? We got ethnic percussion. Actually, no, go solo percussion. And then I'll show the ethnic percussion for later. So what do we got in solo percussion? We got taikos, a bunch of taiko hits, Thor's hammer, which this is Thor's hammer. You got grand casas, more grand casas, and kick drums. But I think kick drums being struck with a stick, kick drums be struck with mallet, and kick drums at the rim. And you can always change it, of course. But there's a lot there. So taikos. This is a taiko flam. Taiko low would be here. Mid taiko, so. So I don't know, because this is solo percussion, so it's just the one taiko being hit. So it's not a taiko ensemble. You might have heard some taiko ensembles in the low ensembles, in the high ensembles, like included with some other instruments, but I really honestly can't tell you. It might be in the manual, but I haven't actually looked at the manual. Sorry, guys. That's okay. So the solo percussion sounds phenomenal, and you can build your own sections out of that, which I think is pretty great. What else? We got ethnic percussion. I kind of don't like the word ethnic because it kind of tends to mean other. It means, non-Western, but I don't like that. Anyway, that's just my thing. Because Ben-Dir, you got this from Middle East. Kayon is from like Latin America. Wooden Sticks is, I don't know, Australia. Mumbai Chase, that all kind of stuff. It's like, obviously there's an ethnic. It's not the time to rant, Meena. It's not the time to rant. That's just, these are opinions that are for another day. Anyway, so we got Ben-Dir, which is a big Middle Eastern frame drum, and the Kayon is the little box you sit on and play. It's like low and high. If I put that on close, it'll sound more like, those acoustic sessions where they do. There you go. I got a whole bunch of stuff like this. So the sounds are fantastic again. And these will be a little more specialized, a little more specific in their purpose. What else we got? We have got the all clacks. So these are all your little high, your clickers, your the things that kind of sound, like this. And that's all your clackers. So really, you can build a whole percussion section out of this library, which I really admire. So basically, if you were going for an all-in-one percussion library that doesn't sound like, just isn't just typical, this is a taiko, this is your, surdo, this is all that kind of stuff. No, here's a whole bunch of different things and a whole really interesting different things that you can still build your entire percussion section around. I think Thunder X3M is quite worth the look. And again, with the mic positions, you can probably add in your own reverb and it'll be fine. So it's really cool. I always like to think of an external reverb as an extra mic position sometimes. So you mix in a little more, and that's again a topic for another day. So it's not really worth delving into right now. The Decca section sounds really interesting in some of these. There's quite a lot that can be done here. And you can really strengthen it up with the compressed signal. So yes, I'm quite enjoying that. And in the more natural section, we've got epic metal. And now these are really, really nice. And problem with some of the metal samples in a lot of percussion libraries is they're too metallic. They're too clangy. They're not necessarily nice and specific enough. But see, these seem to be restrained in a way that makes them more usable. You can still. We got a bunch of anvils. We got some lightning, which is really heavy. Thrall. So you got some heavier ones as well. This is nice and ringy. And that last two. Gates of it. And if I see the low variation, it's a tuned down variation, which is pretty cool. That's something else is actually I wanted to see. A tuning knob if to be included. So I really think a section here with velocity and tuning and maybe a global zone volume would be very ideal. I mean, I don't want to take away from the graphic, but you can probably push the graphic down a little bit and just have this little extra section here, or a section here, somewhere where I can just get a little more tweaky without having to go into the back end. But yeah, that's just me. So the metal, I'm really liking the sound of the metals. So it can get really rude, really. It can get really nice and high and ticky. It's not ticky. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it seems a little less large, a little less, this is a big metal, you know. I don't know. That's just me. So that is Epic Metals, and last but not least, I'm going to go sound design percussion, which I'm guessing is going to be a combination, not guessing, because I haven't really looked at it as much, but the zones are going to be from sound design percussion and a bit of, distorted percussion? Low ensembles? Oh, there's no distorted percussion. You got to build up distorted percussion yourself. I'll look into that. I didn't really look into those. I was very focused on the natural qualities when I was checking it out. So you go. So you got some really nice booms here. It feels like these are maybe affected from the low ensembles. Maybe that's what they all are. It's just I haven't really played with them. Yeah, and that's all the sound design percussion. So I really think it's just the samples put through. Then again, hey, you know, read the manual, so which I didn't. And these with the bass and the compression. Ooh. This is some of the phasing I was talking about. See what I mean? So that with maybe the bass. So here it feels like this is one of the Clacks redesigned. And maybe there's one of the toms redesigned. So yeah. So that's pretty cool. One more thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to load up some of the distorted percussion. What else we got? So yeah, so I'll just go distorted percussion, and so this is run through an amp. That's all of them being. Ooh, this is harsh. Ooh, see, something like that could be really nice to add some edge into composition. Take out the low. I'm only gonna get the close because it's distorted. That's all there is. There's no compressed. There's a lot of distortion there. So there's a lot you can do there. You know, nothing I wouldn't have gotten from a amp simulation. if I wanted to, but it's really cool to have. I wouldn't, be upset at all at their inclusion. And there's also a rolls version. So if you have a look here, where we go, zone 1. And rolls are being controlled via the mod wheel. So you can sync them up to whatever drum you're using. So I'd say you'd load these up as an extra patch and load up rolls when necessary. And they're not for everything. Urban Warriors. So there's some really neat stuff to use. So obviously the focus here isn't on let's sample the heck out of one drum and provide all the articulations and all the hits for everything. It's let's sample combinations and just provide these combinations, and these will sound cool. And then you can add onto it, add some nuances with other solo drums, even the solo drums that are in here, and go from there. Like the taiko, for example, you've got different parts of the taiko being sampled, and sometimes you have the same drum hit with a stick or a mallet or a brush, and that is pretty cool. So, if you've heard the library now, you've heard some of my complaints, you've heard a lot of my praise. You can also just distorted rolls. I didn't actually look at those. Ooh, these are actually nice. And yeah, distorted rolls are nice as well. So you've heard a lot of my praise. You've heard a lot of what I like about the library, and a couple of things that I wish were there. Which, just to sum up, what I wish was there was an actual single global volume or a single zone volume. Like you got global volume per patch, obviously, but I'd like a global volume, one slider that takes everything, and one per zone where I don't have to actually worry about, doing each individual one. So I'll provide the balance and then get the volume, adjust the volume of the drum, and a velocity curve adjuster. That's just my wishes, but literally, like, none of them are really stop me from using the library. And to prove that, I wrote a little thing. It's nothing too fancy. It's just a little track, just combining some of the ensembles and added some strings on top for a bit of context. So I'll play the track, and then I'll play the track with only the drums, and so you can hear it kind of in context. This is where I get a feel of the library that I'm using, and how does it feel when I'm actually trying to lay something down, and how does it react to me, and when I quantize it, how does it sound if I record it in manually? How does it sound if I program it in the piano roll? How does it feel? All that kind of stuff, and I'm happy to report that it feels, feels good enough. Any problem I have with it is more my lack of competence in the process and not the library, because I'll face the same difficulties with any library. But it was pretty easy to kind of lay this down, and it really depended on me and my execution. So yeah. So let me play this track. It's really nothing fancy. It could be, mixed a little better, composed a little better, but it's a nice little 7/8 kind of action feel, whatever. I just came up with it. I played an idea and I liked it and I just went with it. So yeah, so here it is, and I'll play it for you once the track and once just the drums. So there it is, less than a minute, does the job. The strings sound a little too high. I should do something with the strings. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But let me just play you the Thunder part and see how it feels. So there you have it. That's what it sounds like. I did a bit of mixing here to make sure I didn't really go full on. I just did a bit of EQ. That's it. I didn't add any reverb, nothing. So the track isn't the best it could be. It was just really just a quick way of how does this work how does this feel when I work with it, and how does it feel? It feels fantastic. Came up with a great percussion section. I didn't even use the solo percussion or the sound design, which could have been great. I didn't even use, all I did was the natural sound, so I didn't use any of the bass, the extra bass versions or the compressed versions mixed in, which would have made it sound even more awesome, I think. I didn't go through any compression. Literally, this is how it is, with a bit of EQ on top for each section to kind of make them fit together nicely and fit with the strings nicely, which I could have done better. But, you get the idea. Anyway, that is it for me in terms of Thunder. Do I think it's worth the $329? Absolutely. I think for the amount of drums that you get, the amount of stuff that you get, yes. I think it's maybe for comparably, some people might actually no. Comparably, what am I saying? A lot of libraries would be selling at that price point. I think with a similar kind of volume of content. But for the sound, you get the sound which you have heard, and hopefully my composition hasn't actually butchered it. So the sound is great and takes really well to reverb because it's been sampled in a nice hall, but it's still punchy. The combinations are really interesting, and some of the things are really extra cool. And it can function as an all-in-one percussion library. In many cases, you get some snares, some toms, some what am I saying? Kick drums and grand casas and that kind of thing. There are no cymbals, which I've realized. I didn't even think about it, but there are no cymbals, so it's everything but cymbals, I suppose. So if you need the cymbals, maybe you'd get cymbals from somewhere else. But yes, that's my take. That's my 2 cents, and I hope this tells you all you need to know. Hit us up if you've got any questions, and there's more info on the Strezov sampling website. And be sure to visit Film and Game Composers for more of our resources and interviews with composers and that kind of thing. And we hope to see you soon in the next video. Cheers.